Hey everyone, in this video we're going to create our first React application. So we're going to start off by just opening up our favorite IDE or text editor, whatever you want to use, and we're just going to create a blank folder. So I've created a folder here and I've called it YouTube, and you can see there's nothing in it. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to go to a terminal. So depending on what IDE you're using, more than likely you have the ability of a built-in terminal. So if you're using Visual Studio Code like me, you can just go up here to terminal and just click add terminal, and now you're going to type in the following command. So you're going to type in npx create react app, and now we want to give our app a name. So this could be anything. You could call it My React App, or you could call it My App, or you could call it just App. For this video, we're going to call our app My App. So we're just going to say My App, and now we're going to hit enter. So what's happening at the moment is this npx command that we've called, it's going to go and create some boilerplate for us, and the boilerplate is going to allow us to get up and running with our React application very fast without the need of creating multiple files. So this process might take a couple of minutes depending on your machine and depending on your internet connection, because what's actually happening is the npx command is going and it's reaching out, it's using npm and it's pulling down a list of different dependencies while creating our boilerplate code. So now you can see our download has finished. So the next thing we want to do is cd into my app and then npm start, and you can see it tells us exactly what to do here. So we named our application My App. So if you named yours something different, then you're going to have to do cd whatever the name you called it. So for us, we're just going to do cd My App, and now we are in the correct directory, so we can do the npm command start. So npm start, and now we're going to press enter, and now you can see that our application is getting ready to start. So here it's asking me, do I want to run my React app on another port? So I'm just going to say Y for yes, and this probably won't happen for you because you probably won't have another application running on port 3000 on your machine. But now you can see, if I just make this a little bit bigger, you can see on localhost 3001 we get this application here, and this is our React application running. So if I go back to the code, you can see it says what port it's started on, so it's localhost 3001 in my case. For you, it normally starts on port 3000, so more than likely that's the port number that you are going to be running your React application on. So just to kind of go through what has happened, so if you remember before in our folder which was called YouTube, now we have another folder called My App, and that's because that's the name that we gave our project. And then inside My App we have a couple of other folders. We have a couple of files. So the one at the very end is just a README file, so we don't have to worry too much about that. That's just like instructions for the next person coming along if they want to go and run our application. But for this example, we're not going to worry about that too much because this is only a simple basic boilerplate application that we're working with. So we're not going to look at that. The next thing is package.json. So package.json contains a lot of metadata about our application. Now, in this example, you can see it doesn't have a lot in it because we've literally only started our application, but you can still see we've got some information. We've got the name, we've got the version, we've got dependencies, and then we've got things like scripts and ES linting configs and a couple of other things. So the next one to look at is package.lock.json, and the difference between package.json and package.lock.json is if you go into the file package.lock.json, you'll see it starts off with the name and the version similar to package.json, but then when you get to dependencies, it has a whole bunch of dependencies, and along with the dependencies it has version numbers for all of the different dependencies. So if we go back into package.json, we can see, if we go to our dependencies, we only see a very high level overview of our dependencies, but in our package lock.json it gives us much greater detail. So if we want to go and change a version number of some dependency, we can do that in package lock.json. So hence the name package lock.json locks the dependencies. So as we can see here, if we go and pick one of our dependencies, so let's say the Babel core, we can see that this is version 7.9.0. If you go into the package.json, you're not going to see that in there. And if we wanted to change that to maybe 6.0 or something instead of 7.9, we can do so here. And we can go and npm run again, and it'll update the node modules. And the node modules is up here, and the node modules contains whatever is in the package.json and the package lock.json. So if we go and open these up, we can see there's many different dependencies, and you can see Babel is here. This is the one that we're looking at. So we can see inside our Babel we have loads of other different libraries that we can look at. You'd never actually go in and change these node modules yourself. You would only really go and change the package lock.json or the package.json, and then you'd run npm start again, and that would update your node modules. But again, you're not really going to be touching the readme file or package.json or package lock.json very often, and you're never going to touch the node modules. And then for the git ignore file, this file is just a list of other files in your whole application that you don't want to be committed when you make a commit to Git. So when you're pushing to Git, any files that's in here will not be pushed. So for example, any node modules, anything in this node modules folder will not be pushed to Git, because when we go and push all our information to Git, as I told you before, with our package.json or package lock.json, when we run our npm start, that'll go and download all our node modules for us. So we don't have to go and push them to Git, because it'll be quite cumbersome to manage all the node modules. So these two files here, public and source, these are the ones that we're going to be working with the most in our React application, and mainly more so in source. So if we have a look in public here, we can see there's things like our index.html page. So this is the very first page that we're going to see on our React application when we open it up. But React uses the idea of components. So again, index.html is not going to be touched too much. It's going to be more so in the source. You're going to create different components and you're going to manage them and change them. And in our public here, we also have another couple of things like images and icons. And then if we go and close that and we go into source, this is the folder with the files that we're going to be dealing with the most. So as you can see, when we start off any application, index.js is going to be the first thing that we're going to go to. So if we go and have a look at this, if we just ignore everything at the top, because these are just imports that we're getting from certain places. So if we go and look at this, you can see we're importing a CSS file, which is this here, index.css, and we're importing our app, and the app in this case is just another JavaScript file, and it's a component that we're taking in, and we can see it's being displayed here using this syntax. So if we go down a little bit here, if we go down to this render method and we look inside this render method, this is what is actually being pushed out to the screen. So if I go back to our browser where we have our React application running, we can see this little atom along with this text and this URL to learn React. This is what we see. And if we go to this, it doesn't quite look like that from looking at this code. And that's mainly because all the stuff that we're seeing is inside this app component. This component here, this index.js, is only really like a parent, and this parent holds many different children or child components, and currently this parent only has one child component, and that child component is app here. So if we go into app, we can actually get a better look to see what is being pushed out onto the screen. So if we go into app.js here, this probably starts to look a little bit more familiar to you if you're used to HTML and CSS. So again, ignore all this stuff at the top here, because this is just things that were important. Like for example, we're importing app.css in this case, which is just styling. We're importing a logo, which if we go and look at here, we can see logo.svg, so we can just ignore that. And if we go back into our app and we hit our return here, so you can see we've got this function and we call it app, and that function is then called in index.js. So inside this function here, we can see a div. So we're probably all familiar with divs. So this is our opening div and this is our closing div, and we can see some text like learn React. So this learn React here, if we go back to our browser, we can see learn React here. So if we go back here and we were to change this, maybe we just say React, so we take off learn, and now we need to go and just save this file. And if we go back, now we can see React. So that's one way that we can change it. We can also go and see the way this is an anchor tag. So meaning that when we go and hit this React text on our browser, we're going to be redirected, or a new tab is going to open up with the React documentation, and we can see that's what happens. So we can go and close that down because we don't want that yet. And we can just delete this React text, or we could get rid of this whole anchor altogether. So I'm going to get rid of that anchor because it's not needed. I'm going to just save that file, and I'm going to go back, and now you can see React is gone altogether. So there's no text or link that I can go and click on to open up the React documentation. Now if we go back here, we can see this paragraph tag here. So this paragraph tag, it has this source /app.js, and it has and save to reload. So that's just the text that we can see here. So if we go back to that, and maybe we go and delete that paragraph, and we can go and save that file again, and now we can see that text is gone, and we're just left with this atom here. And we could also go and get rid of that as well. Now if you look at this, we can see how we can go and display a logo or a picture. So this is a little bit different than maybe you're used to in just normal HTML. So this here isn't actually HTML, even though it looks very like HTML. It's actually called JSX, and JSX is the language that React uses, and this language here called JSX is transpiled into normal JavaScript. And as you know, or you might know, JavaScript can go and create things like HTML elements. So traditionally you might go and create your HTML elements using HTML, and then you might use the JavaScript for more functionality, but JavaScript can create HTML elements like paragraphs and divs and images and things like that. So if we want to, we could really go and get rid of all of this. So get rid of the header and go and save this. And now if I go back to my browser, you can see it's completely blank. It's just white, and that's the way we want it because we've deleted everything. And just to make sure that it's like actually still working, we could put in some random text here. So we could put in our name, and we could save that and go back, and you can see that Ryan is displayed. And then you could go here and you could maybe do something else. Maybe you want to do H1, and maybe we'll put in Ryan Hill, and we go and save that, and now we can see that Ryan Hill is displayed in H1 font. So if we go back to our React application, that's really the basics of creating your first React application. Now you can go and tidy a couple of things up, like for example, you can see we're getting a warning here, so it still compiles and everything still works perfectly, but it's just telling us that we've got this logo thing, but it's never actually used. So that's true, because the logo that we were using was the little React atom, but we're no longer displaying that anymore. So we could just delete that because it's not needed. If we go and look at the app.css, which is here, if we didn't want any of this CSS, we could just go and delete this from here, and we could also delete that because we're not really getting much from it. There's also a couple of things like our logo.svg. We could also delete that because it's no longer needed either. So I hope you have a better understanding of what React is and how you can start working on your first React application. I'm planning to make more videos around React, so using things like creating components, how to manage state, using props. So if that interests you, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.